Hello, my loves. So today is a bit of an unusual call because normally I'm walking us through case studies with women who've been through the space of SEM. But as you may or may not know, I have worked very closely in one-on-one containers with men for many, many, many years. And today's call is going to be with a beloved client of mine who is a man. And he came in because he was navigating a divorce. He was having a massive dark night of soul and didn't even know what that was. And he was very aware that there were toxic patterns that were coming up in his life. And he didn't know actually how to come through that space into his power and into his truth. And so today we're going to walk you through kind of what our journey was together and what happened from where he started to where he is now. But if you are a man who is in the thick of it, going through a divorce, losing yourself, trying to refine yourself, and you're looking for a method and a space that actually brings you back into your power in the more feminine aspecting of healing, please listen to this because the transformations and the results in your life are inevitable and clear. And I'm so excited to welcome him in so we can really talk through exactly how that process looked. Okay, my love. Firstly, thank you so much for being on this call today. Before we dive in, maybe just introduce yourself, age, location, a bit about you, just so we know who we're with.
Yeah. Pat Domenico, I'm just turned 40 in Melbourne, Australia, father of three boys. Yeah, single, separated, recently divorced. Um, yeah, it's a bit about sort of me and where I'm sort of located.
It's always really, I'm so excited for our call because it is a more unusual one in the sense of just man coming in, also that like stage of life. But I know when we began together, there was just a lot. I mean, we met, we connected, and when you first landed in, you were in the sort of early days of the separation and things were coming up for you. I would love for you to share, if you feel to, a little bit of like where you were at when we first connected in.
Yeah. So I'd been separated for probably 4 to 5 months by that stage. Yeah, like October 24, when I was like, we'd obviously had a relationship prior, meeting overseas in Bali and, continuing obviously to keep in touch, but with obviously, listening to your stuff and knowing you, I'm like, okay, I've reached my limit and there's no more sort of holding back. I need to really, this is my opportunity. I need obviously help and to sort of gain obviously myself. That was probably the biggest thing, like my self-confidence and self sort of belief and being able to really own who I am, which at that stage, as much as I thought, you know, being, was it 38, 39, father, business owner and running, multiple businesses that had, up to 50 employees and everything like that, I generally thought I had my shit together. However, obviously these experiences in life, like going through a divorce, a separation, can really sort of strip that away. And it's like, who are you really? So yeah, I got to that point where I was like, Emma, let's do this.
Wow. Also, like, it's so beautiful what you share because I feel like, especially for the masculine in our lives currently, so many men feel like you've got your shit together and you're doing well when it's like business and moving and housing and children. And it's like all the things that men should do, and you tick all the boxes. But there's these layers underneath what I've seen many times with men that just have never been seen, never been felt, never been experienced. And then you get hit with something like a divorce, and it's just strips it all to the surface. And it's like, what do you do then as a man to actually navigate that whilst still having all the responsibilities and everything coming up in your life, but the deeper work?
Yeah.
I know you said like a lot came up that you hadn't looked at before. Where were you kind of at, like when all of the split happened mentally and emotionally, even your connection to your body? Like what was happening for you at that time?
Um, I was definitely in a frame of mind of scarcity, trying to cling on to the old, you know, as in the relationship, the marriage. It was like, because I didn't really know who I was without it. And it's, understanding that that's what also contributed. That was obviously my part bringing that energy and understanding that I'd done a lot of really tough, challenging things, physically, certain events in the States, 75 hours, run by, ex-military people. And you think that's just, but that's one aspect of sort of masculinity, mental sort of toughness and resilience and all that. But the emotional, I guess, control, that was another, and being okay with self and being able to just sit in everything and still being okay. Um, so that for me was sort of one of the things where I wasn't okay in the chaos, as they say.
Yeah, I remember as well, like when we started working together, it was like this, like, oh my gosh, there were layers, like your inner child and your body, and then just being attached into a relationship that was ending, but just seeing all of those toxic patterns occurring also in her system and not in a real sense understanding it. It was like, this is just a messy divorce, and there was like shitty stuff that was coming up, but there wasn't this like awareness of how many layers had happened in your life to bring you to that
Mm.
point. And I also remember you went through like quite a big, I know you hired a weight trainer coach, but your body
Yep.
also shifted a lot.
Yeah,
Like a
massively,
great change.
massively. That was one thing that, and understanding with the work that we did, like my emotional eating, where that really came from, and how that created safety for me, and that I've, yo-yoed from 100, to 138 kilos for years. And this is, I guess, and the work definitely wasn't easy. However, this is the first time where I've been more consistent. And even though this is the first time I ever lived alone. Um, so still being in that space of, okay, I'm okay, regardless of the circumstances, and still taking care of myself and not relying on those vices, which was, yeah, which is the way that I coped with a lot of things before. So yeah, my health has definitely dramatically improved because of the stuff that we've done.
It's so crazy. Like I remember when we had our first call and you're like, I'm literally in the hotel room and like
Yeah.
just left the house and my whole life as I know it. And it was like this identity that you had. And honestly, like my heart breaks, especially for men, because there's just not a lot given to support men in this world when life falls apart. And it's like your inner child is exposed, your sense of self, your identity, your body. And also, and I remember with you, like that, and you touched on it, that connection of like you don't know who you are without your partner, but all this
Mm.
stuff's not come up and you're kind of forced to be with yourself and sit with it and not go to all the vices, or ideally not go to all the
Yeah.
vices, and actually start to
Yeah.
do the work where it's like I'm not going to just binge out or porn out or this out, or that I'm going to come in, but also kind of like how. And I remember that first call with you, it was like it's all
Yeah.
happening and I don't know
Right.
what to do.
Could not think of a better sort of, a place where you could think of, this is this is where I am next week. I'm no longer. So that was literally our first call, and remember that having to unpack my bags. That was in the hotel room. That was my week, and at the time, I remember being in tears during a call. However, like I reflect back on it now, and it's like that was probably one of the best opportunities for me to step up, to really just take off everything that was, I'd been using as a facade to get through life. So yeah, that was an
Like
interesting memory.
wild times. But yeah, okay. So start point was literally as the whole divorce separation started, a lot of stuff, emotional, eating, baggaging. There was just a load around you, and then life kind of just smashed you. And you went through your process. I'm curious, like where you are now. What shifted for you emotionally, spiritually, even physically? What's happened since that time to now?
Um, Probably the biggest shift is my certainty on who I am and being good with self. Obviously, my faith, with God. That's been probably the biggest thing that's also helped me get through this time. Even though it's been one of the most, is probably the time where I've been most challenged and I've had the least materialistic or, whether you say financial in terms of, assets, whatever it may be, like this is where I probably feel the most richest and the most strongest in my life. And had you asked me that 12 months ago, I'd have been like, that's crazy. Like I need to have this. I need to have the car. I need to have, at the time I still had a Range Rover Sport where right now I'm driving a van. But it's okay. Like I know that I have a path and that used to be an issue for me. Um, where now it's like, I'm good. Like I don't need to please anyone else. Um, if someone, you know, is in my life for whatever reason, fantastic. If they're not, then I'm grateful for the time that, or whatever we were able to contribute to one another. Whether it's friendship, business, whatever, like not chasing is probably the biggest thing and being good with self. So yeah, that's where I'm at right now.
I also just, from my side, it's always so beautiful to hear, and we always share it too. Like, of course, when we talk, but for a lot of men, like if you're listening to this, I feel like one of the biggest shadow pains of the masculine is constantly performing and chasing and clinging and needing all of this stuff around us. And then when it falls apart, you lose yourself, and then you're just lost because you're drained, and your whole life has been orientated towards either the image or like what that image gives you, but you lose your truth. And it doesn't matter how much you have or do or claim if you've actually lost what you need inside you to be in your truth. And I remember when we started, I was like, there's going to be a process. Like life is stripping you back. And equally, like when you share now, the level of man you've become and the level of depth and truth you have and the level of sovereignty you've got and the way you've navigated what previously would have been like wild from like emotional manipulation and home stuff, but so in your power, for me is like what it's all about, because you've come back into you in a very real sense.
And I literally had to get stripped to the bone. Like, you know, uh, last Christmas that, here in Australia, that's our summer. January like was from that's after sort of 2, 3 months of work that we'd done. It had to get worse before it got better. And that was the process before of literally, the shadow work that we did, the inner child stuff, the um, retaining like the sex energy and all the practices and everything that we did, things that I felt like I couldn't live without. I had to learn to be uncomfortable with it, but it had to get worse before it got better. Which now I kind of really always go back to that when things are not necessarily going the way that I would like, is sometimes things have to get worse before they get better. And it's sticking in it and not running from it. So like one of the practices that we did where there was a process where it was half an hour, like me sitting still for half an hour was like there's no way, it's not even possible. uh, However, being able to do that, it's amazing when we just sit in it and whatever came up and being okay with it. I remember the first time my back was killing and it's like, I wasn't meant to move. But after a little while, you get, used to the discomfort and you're okay with it. And then all the benefits of it start to come through and you can stay with your thoughts. And so, yeah, it's definitely worth the effort.
Yeah. It's also something I feel very passionate about because I think the world we live in today always wants to be like the good, the best, the best. And genuinely, especially for men, like it's such a condition that blocks us from truth. And it's not realistic. I mean, life is going to hit us with a lot of stuff. And I believe real masculinity isn't all the stuff you glean and show, it's who you are through everything. It's the
Mm,
capacity to be in your center and your truth. It's your capacity to hold. It's your capacity to then penetrate with your vision or to stay put. It's this ability in a man's body to actually steer the direction of life when everything's moving around you that would have once ripped us apart, right? And I know like when you
mm,
started, there was like those like tendencies to like, and through the process, again, it's so important. Like men, I think a big pain of men is that they don't feel real. They don't feel seen. They don't feel like they matter. It's what they do, it's what they have, it's what they give, but their truth is not seen and known. And it's because you've lost it in yourself.
mm.
And I remember as you went through your process, seeing it was almost like you just reassimilating back, like you coming back into your field, you coming back into your truth, and then witnessing the divorce structure shifting, the process of work shifting, your own truth and healing with your inner child and your past shifting, and you coming into this like state of being amidst it all, and decades of patterns changing as
Mm.
well, which was just wild. And I always think like with men, I never want us to paint this like perfect picture for anyone because it's just not realistic in this human experience to have that. And that's what everyone's showing. And it's like, no, what we need is the capacity when it gets stripped away to come back to truth. Because from there, there's a natural consequence, there's a natural flow that will do this for our eternal experience on this earth. But the truth we have inside us directs the path of consciousness that moves for us.
Yeah.
A question I have for you, what were some of the biggest things? I know, like, when we started, and there's so much to glean on, but like, there were a lot of blockages, especially like inner child stuff, things that had happened in your past, divorce stuff, even your own body and connection to yourself. What did you find were like things we did that really helped you come back?
As in processes or
Yeah, processes, practices. What were the things that were like, okay, that really synchronized?
yeah. Whether like it was a cord cutting, which is something we did initially, being able to write like the letters, like the forgiveness sort of letters and being able to let go and um, the practices of whether I'm not sure whether you call it meditation or whatever, but being able to sit in the practices and really being in our thoughts and not feeling like you had to like that I couldn't retain you know yourself, like that it had to be like there was that self-discipline, and even that like in itself, maybe that contributed to some of like the gains in the gym and that, but just increase the testosterone because you're able to retain and be able to have that control, because that's probably one of the biggest things is not being able to, like, we can't control our own sort of emotions and desires, then how do we that translates to how we show up. And I think people generally feel that as well.
It's also so beautiful, like especially with men, because like women are far more like, yeah, I forgot a lot, but men are like, yeah, there's this crazy experience, which most men never do, but like I connected to my cock. I went through this process. I did like this energy thing. I sat in my pain. Some weird shit happened for 90 minutes. But then there's this like repercussion of it. Like the body shifts, discipline at the gym changes, your capacity to hold financial crisis increases, your capacity to communicate with your partner or ex-partner and navigate all of those chaoses become
Yep.
clearer, your ability to set boundaries. It's like there's this evidential shift in what I know for a lot of men is like, that is not something I would ever sit and do, like writing forgiveness letters to a part of myself and like another timeline and like breathing through the pain. But it is beautiful to hear, like, as you went through it, there were a lot of shifts that then just started to naturally happen in your experience.
Yep. No, definitely. And just being able to let go of, the divorce and the anger and, all the things that, um, which then obviously translates to being able to have a better experience co-parenting and for the kids um, and just showing up. Like you just generally show up different once you show up in a different way. So yeah, definitely.
So good. Also, like, just always powerful to hear and see. Couple few last questions. Before you began the journey, was there anything that almost prevented you from joining?
Um, Looking back, there was some sort of hesitation, but I think the real hesitation was the fear of change because chaos and sort of, those it gave me a sense of purpose still. It's like if things aren't fucked up, then I don't have anything to fix. So I can, the more I, in terms of just avoid, doing the work and becoming better, then that means that I don't focus on other things. And then if I'm better, then things are gonna be better in my life. So it's a weird sort of way to look at it because some people may say it's like it's financial or whatever it is, but it's like, well, how much does this really cost me today? Like, just turned 40 and it's like, well, I've made a lot of financial decisions because of whether it's trying to, people please and trying to seek that validation because I'm not okay with voicing my own opinion or not. Internally, it doesn't feel right. But so, that cost me $300,000 as an example, a business partnership that didn't go well. But I feel like as in if I had been, different, as in terms of the way that I feel about myself now, I wouldn't have put myself in that situation. So, you know, I had my boys as a big, in terms of why and purpose of, why to do the work. So that sort of helped. But it's like, I don't think it was financial. It was like staying stuck with who I was because that's what I was comfortable with. And I knew that like going to the gym and in the process of getting fit, it's going to hurt. So yeah, that's probably now in hindsight, looking back, that's probably the reason sort of why.
Also, so always beautiful to hear, especially from men when they reflect like what was like the like moment, because it is true, like the fear of change is a massive one for the masculine because it's like if there's no problem, I'll fix it. But equally, like, there are problems, but it's like we don't need to go to that problem. Equally, though, and it's beautiful you shared it, like the amount that it costs men if you're not in a strong emotional, spiritual, anchored state is just a huge devastation. And I know when we started to work together, you were kind of facing some of those consequences, even with the marriage dissolving and just where you were at in your life. And it's like, okay, this is huge. And equally, sometimes life pushes us to be like, you have to change. Now we just need the right way to change so that we don't repeat what's been kind of building for all of those years. So, yeah, thank you for sharing. And I guess another question is what was the big thing that made you take the leap? Like, what was it for you?
Um, because I know we had a discussion maybe mid last year, June, but I think knowing that, okay, the divorce, the separation was official, I was going to leave home. Um, like that's it. Like the, I guess the pain was greater than the pleasure. Right? The discomfort was too much. Like it had reached sort of that point, and who knows? Had I taken that leap of faith and you know, invested and committed to myself earlier, maybe my situation might be different. But however, like I'm a big believer that everything happens for a reason, and we're aligned, and everyone comes into our path. Like we'd met when I was with a friend in Ubud in Bali at some restaurant in some random corner, and had I'd not sort of gone to Bali, and we'd gone there for dinner, and we would have never crossed paths, but it's come exactly when I've needed, and I'd highly encourage anyone if they have that voice in there, in the back saying, this is something that I need, that yeah, definitely to take the leap of faith, because the consequences are far greater than investing that time or the money. And I wasn't in the best financial position to be doing it, but I knew I had to do something different. So yeah, you'd been at, like always popping up, or in some way that I was like, okay, I'm not going to ignore the signs anymore.
But also beautiful. And it's always my final question is if you were gonna say something to another person, man, woman who's like on the fence and they're in a circumstance maybe similar to yours, what would you actually want to tell them for their journey?
Nothing's going to change unless you change. And change only happens when we do something different. Um, so this was definitely different. This wasn't some, physical event or massive, challenge that I've always been putting myself into. Um, but it was a different type of, physical, emotional challenge that challenged me in a different perspective. And yeah, I highly recommend anyone, especially a man, like being a man, and it's not, you don't have a lot of men as clients, but it also helps men, not just women. Helps us to understand women as well. Like that was probably the biggest thing. Is like, well, wait a minute. Out of all the relationships I had, there's a common denominator here. Um, so understanding the importance of emotional safety and security for a woman, and presence, and it's like, you know, you don't really understand it till you're able to see your own shit. So
I often share it with men where I'm like, I don't think men get the opportunity to sit with a woman and like dissect and understand themselves with a woman in safety and then go through these processes and really learn. Like I often with men, I'm like, they just they don't know, but they're designed to know everything and be super this. And there is such an importance. And again, to every man I've ever worked with, I'm like, there is this opportunity to sit with a very feminine being who's going to hold you in a more masculine role and you will be more in your
yeah,
feminine role, but to start to unpack and glean all those layers so you can actually shift in times of usually crisis. I tend to find men come into my field too and they're like, man, shit's just really fucked up now. Like, I don't even know. But like, you keep popping up. And I'm like, yes, the universe loves you. So yeah.
yeah.
On that note, any final things you'd like to share before we close up this portal?
No, just I guess a big thank you for holding that space for me during that that time, coming in exactly when it was needed, and yeah, teaching me and learning so many things in that time that I know is going to have amazing impact in a positive way to my growth and obviously my future. So yeah, thank you very much for that.
I love you so much, and thank you for coming into the field, my masculines. But thank you. It's been a huge privilege, and thank you for sharing also just parts of your journey today. It's always miraculous, especially seeing men who go in and do the work, even though they're like, what the fuck is this? We're like, I'm going in. And seeing those changes and being a part of that journey is huge. So thank you. And to anyone who is watching this, if you're in a similar circumstance and you're at that point where you're like, I don't even fucking know, but I know something needs to change, please feel free. There's always a link below. Book in a call. I'd love to connect. And yeah, begin that journey. Okay, my darling. Big hug.
Thank you.